It has been, well, it's been a tough time for referees recently. Drugs, sex, and rock and roll are something apparently regular things in the refereeing world. David Coote, of course, is the guy that blew the lid off this, right? He was on video absolutely trashed, talking about how he hated Jurgen Klopp and he didn't want to talk to him. And there were some other videos circulating of some other unsavory behavior and some other unsavory accusations. And very recently, David Coote was officially fired. That was the most obvious headline of all time. Nobody was surprised by that because everything that came out about him was so bad. And what I thought was interesting, and what I talked about at the time, throwing aside all of the drug use and the partying stuff that clearly went way into excess, was that David Coote's thoughts were not unusual. Right, the referees were human beings with lives and internal monologues, and they liked people and they didn't like people. The point was that nobody else knew that, and as long as they could project impartiality and practice impartiality, it didn't care whether they loved or hated Jose Mourinho, as long as they could officiate him properly and never say that they loved or hated him publicly, because that would tarnish the public's opinion of what was going on. Well, I think these referees might have taken the "we just have normal lives on the side" too thing a little too far. For this story, we're taking a trip to Mexico, the land to the south of the United States full of over 100 million people. That's right. You probably didn't realize how big Mexico is, and one of the wealthier leagues in the world. Tons of clubs, big wages, packed big stadiums. The Mexican League is a league that not a ton of people outside of Mexico pay attention to. It's very widely watched in the United States. If I turn on Univision, the Spanish language channel in the U.S., I'm probably going to be watching a Liga MX game. But it is certainly not a league that, has any cross appeal outside of CONCACAF, right? It's not a league that's going to draw the eye. Liga MX does have a lot of players from Central America in it, a few from the Caribbean, right? So it does draw eyes from there as well. I don't mean to suggest the Mexican League is only watched in Mexico. But in that league, there has been some particularly crazy drama. And for this, I have to credit Marca. They're the people who wrote the article that I have since Google translated from Spanish into English that is going to inform a lot of this story, at least confirm the facts of a lot of these different things that maybe I saw on Twitter or Instagram, right? And the referee in question is Rosario Guadalupe Cardenas. He is a young referee who, over the first couple of years of his career, apparently, not that I, keep track of Mexican wonder kid referees, apparently had made a very good impression. Such as, as a result, he looks like this, baby-faced assassin here, and he's refereeing top league games in Mexico, which is a intense job. Mexican fans are notoriously not chill. All right, it's not the easiest job in the world to be in that position, and Rosario Guadalupe Cardenas is in that position, except he's not. He was just fired. He was just fired. But it's the fact that obviously him being fired, refs get fired all the time. It's how he got fired. And for that, we have to tell the story of one match. It was the Clásico Regio, match day 12 of the Apertura tournament. So the Mexican League works in two halves. All right, there's the Apertura and then the Clausura. All right, the Apertura is basically a season, and then the Clausura is basically a season. They're technically part of the same season, but you play a season, then have a playoff, then have a winner, then you start all over. Play a season, have a playoff, have a winner. Don't know why they've decided to do it that way. The Apertura is the first half of this process. So it's match day 12, which is second half of the season in the Apertura. This is the type of ball knowledge I have. I didn't know who Edgar Davids was until 4 years ago, but I know this sort of shit. It's weird. So the match was Monterrey and Tigres, and this guy's assigned to be the fourth official, which I would imagine being the fourth official is like being the backup goalkeeper. Even though you got to put up the board and you got to manage the substitutions, you don't have to do any of the running, right? And when you're the backup goalkeeper, can you go out and have a beer the night before? Yeah, probably. I mean, you might have to come in. You don't want to be unprofessional. But it's the same as in baseball. Every 5 days, there's a starting pitcher. But there's 5 starting pitchers on the team. So if it's your day to be the starting pitcher, you probably should get a good night's sleep. But if you're not the starting pitcher, you can kind of do, as long as you show up to the ballpark, it's incredibly unlikely that you're going to be used. This leads to one of my favorite baseball stories of all time, by the way, even though that so loosely relates to this that it'll make your nose bleed. A guy named David Wells, who was a starting pitcher for the New York Yankees, who you've probably heard of. It was his day off, right? It was not his day to start, and so he went out with the entire Saturday Night Live crew the night before and got hammered. Like one of those, he describes it as one of those nights where you just go out and it gets carried away, him and Jimmy Fallon and all the other guys, and he just gets ripped. And then, of course, he gets to the ballpark the next morning, and the coach walks up to him and says, "Hey, dude, you're the other guy's down with the flu. We've decided to start you on short rest today." So he's got a blaring hangover, and then he has to go start the match anyways. Start the baseball game anyways. And he said he threw the worst, he had the worst warm-up of his entire life. And then all of a sudden the game starts and he throws what's called a perfect game, which has happened less than 30 times in the history of baseball. And the history of baseball is quite long. I mean, we're talking all the way back to the 1870s here. It's only happened less than 30 times, and he delivered a feat that great while blaringly hungover, which apparently clearly helped him. Unfortunately, being a referee and getting caught doing the same sort of thing does not potentially provide the same rewards. And David Wells was obviously very lucky that he wasn't just outed for smelling like an entire, beer tower full of Bud Light. In Cardenas, what he did was probably worse. And then what was done to him was bad too. Okay. Cardenas doesn't show up for the game. All right. This is in mid-October. The ref just doesn't show up for the game. And initially, the reason given was that it was medical reasons. So you're thinking some sort of illness. He cut his, hand making dinner the night before, and he had to go to the hospital and get stitches. That's the sort of thing that you're thinking of. But later, details started to emerge about exactly why Cardenas was not at the game, right? So that's the initial officiating group cover, is that he's had medical issues and he's not going to be able to be the fourth official. They get another fourth official and then just kind of throw him out on the field. And so they're able, the game goes off without a hitch. This didn't affect the flow of the game really at all. You just had to go get another fourth official. And the official investigation concludes and doesn't really tell you all of that much, other than Cardenas is fired. Following the investigation, it is decided to terminate the contract of referee Rosario Guadalupe Cardenas for non-compliance with the arbitration rules. Non-compliance with referee rules, that's the reason given, and he's gone. So you got to dig a little deeper in order to figure out what actually happened. Because initially the whispers were that, hey, there might have been a girl around the hotel the night before. There might have been a girl around the hotel the night before, right? Which, again, not the worst thing in the world, right? If you're a young, single, handsome, eligible bachelor referee, you matched with somebody on Tinder. I don't know his life, right? Then that happens. The girl comes over, like, okay. But what if you pay for the girl to come over? That might change the equation a little bit. This was finally confirmed by former referee Francisco Chacon. So this is according to the former referee Francisco Chacon, who spoke to Marca about this. He said that, about these rumors that there had been a girl around the hotel and that had something to do with this guy being fired. He said that apparently Cardenas hired a woman, a prostitute, basically, to come to his hotel room. And then the woman drugged and assaulted him in the hotel room and robbed him or something. And so he was not able to be the fourth official for medical reasons. That was true, but it was because he had taken drugs or been drugged with a lady of the night, with an escort, while in his hotel room. And then he was also assaulted, which is bad, which I feel bad for him if that part in particular is true, because you making one mistake doesn't necessarily mean that you should be assaulted. That turbo sucks. And you get, not only were you assaulted, but you then broke a bunch of rules in the the officials code of conduct here, and then you get fired for it as well. It's kind of like one of those slapstick comedy routines where you step one way and step on a board and it smacks you in the face, and you go the other way and step on a board and it smacks you in the face. This guy's having a terrible time, but he also made some terrible decisions that led up to it. But that is the latest story, though, in a line now of referees who are having their personal lives aired pretty openly. That is just insane. The night before a match, bro, you got all the other nights. If you want to have a wild night, if you want to make some terrible life decisions, you got all the other nights. The night before a match. Tough look. Tough look.